So fantasy drafts happen this weekend, and the next few days they'll continue to go on before the season starts here on Thursday, April 1st. So here's a last second advice: a few pitchers you should stash in your fantasy draft, even though these guys are injured. The first guy's Mike Soroka of the Atlanta Braves. So Soroka last season, he got hurt with a bad Achilles injury on his right ankle, and he was hurt on August 3rd. So last season it was a small sample size, but we know what Soroka is capable of, and we seen him be an ace for the Atlanta Braves a few seasons ago. So last season, 13 innings he pitched, 3.95 ERA, 8 strikeouts, and a 1.32 whip. So pretty much he only had 2 starts. And right now he's throwing stimulated games in the Atlanta Braves camp, and he's not going to be ready by opening day. But I think he'll come back in a few weeks. And right now they're ranking him 191 coming into the season is Soroka, and he's going average draft pick about 170th. So if you could get an ace who possibly could come back in a few weeks here in the 15th to 16th round, where he's getting picked on average pick, that's a home run in my opinion. Because right here, pitching, it's a big part of baseball. It's a big part of fantasy baseball. And obviously Soroka, he's on a team that definitely could be a team in World Series contention this season, even though in my opinion the Braves are the third best team in the National League. But Soroka on the season, they're projecting him 123 innings, 7 wins, a 2.93 ERA with a 1.13 whip. So that's decent numbers, but not anything great, especially his strikeouts per inning aren't going to be that high. But Soroka, I think he could be a good ball player and help your fantasy team. And if you could get him, like I said, in the 15th, 16th round, it's definitely an injured guy that you should stash on your fantasy roster, especially if he's coming back soon. The next pitcher is Carlos Carrasco of the New York Mets. So Carrasco, he was a big addition to this Met team, including Francisco Lindor in the trade the Mets and the Indians made in the offseason. So Carrasco now, he's out with a hamstring tear, and there's no timetable for his return, so it's a big blow for the Mets. It's a big blow for Carrasco, and coming into the season now, they're ranking him 259, but his average pick is about 105th still, even with the hamstring tear. And IL spots, they're obviously a big part of fantasy baseball, and this season in most leagues, there'll probably be 2 or 3 IL spots, especially with all the other injuries and illnesses out there this year. But anyway, Carlos Carrasco last season, he was great for this Indian team. 68 innings, 3 wins, 82 strikeouts, a 2.91 ERA, and a 1.21 whip. So hopefully Carrasco, he comes back sooner than later. But he's a guy that probably will come back before Mike Soroka, in my opinion. So if Carrasco's only out another month or 2, it's not the worst of things. And especially if you could stash him and get him late. And this season for Carrasco, they're projecting him 119 innings, 9 wins, 146 strikeouts, a 3.33 ERA, and a 1.16 whip. So I think those numbers are pretty solid projections, because we don't have a timetable for his return. But I'm assuming here he's going to be out 4 to 6 more weeks, is Carrasco, with the hamstring tear. Because obviously for a pitcher, you're pushing off the mound the whole game. You're using your legs as your power, not just your arm throwing the baseball. So hopefully Carrasco could get back soon, and he's definitely worth a good stash. The next pitcher is Chris Sale of the Boston Red Sox. So Sale, he was out last season, obviously, with the Tommy John injury, and we'll see when he comes back this year in Sale. But Sale, we know what he's capable of. He's been an ace in this league for many seasons, and Chris Sale, he's yet to throw off from mounds, the latest report, so he's going to be out much longer, in my opinion, than Carlos Carrasco and Mike Soroka, it looks like. So Sale, his rank coming into the season's 306, and managers, they're drafting him 233 on average. So this guy, he's going about 20th to the 23rd round, very late towards the back end of fantasy drafts, is Chris Sale. And like I said, last season he didn't pitch, and this season the projections are only 76 innings, 5 wins, 101 strikeouts, a 3.67 ERA, and a 1 whip. So they're projecting about 7 or 8 starts, maybe a little more for Chris Sale this season. And I think he'll come back probably in July or August, and especially if this Red Sox team struggles again and they're out of the race early, I don't see them pushing for Chris Sale to come back. But as a fantasy owner, he's always worth a stash, injured or not. is Chris Sale. He's a guy you want on your roster. And if he's going to come back in June or July, that's like making a big trade in your fantasy league at the deadline of getting an ace type of pitcher that's going to come in there and do work. And especially if you could get him in the later rounds, like I said, 20th to the 23rd round, I think it's a definite stash here. The next pitcher is Noah Syndergaard of the New York Mets. And Noah Syndergaard, like Chris Sale, had Tommy John surgery as well last season. But Syndergaard, he's a guy that wants to pitch good and pretty much needs to pitch good. He's a free agent after the season, so if he gets hurt again, obviously he's only going to get a one-year deal from the Mets or another team with incentives included. So Syndergaard, we haven't seen him on a mound since 2019. And Rojas, the other day on a side session, Syndergaard, the miles per hour, it's still up there though at 97 miles per hour. And right now the timetable for his return is late May or early June, but I think the Mets are going to be cautious with him. And I think it's going to be more like a mid-June, early July here for Syndergaard. And on the season, they're ranking him 318 coming into drafts. But he's another guy like Chris Sale. He's going 236 on average is his draft pick. So he's going about 20th to the 23rd round, maybe a little earlier in the 18 is Syndergaard as well. And Syndergaard, we've seen flashes of him throughout his career where he could go on a tear and be an ace pitcher, and then you see times where he could only go 5 or 6 innings and struggle to get through the ball game. But Noah Syndergaard this season, they're projecting 93 innings, 6 wins, 86 strikeouts, a 4.26 ERA, and a 1.27 whip. So the numbers, they're all that great for Syndergaard projecting into the season, and they're projecting him about pitching 12 to 15 games, maybe a little more this year with the 93 innings on projection. But Syndergaard, he's definitely worth the stash. And like Sale, if he's a guy that could come back in May or June, but I doubt it. I'm thinking more mid-June, July. That's like trading for a big-time pitcher in your fantasy league. Even though I don't think Syndergaard will have a huge year, I think he'll be mediocre at best. And the fifth and final pitcher you should stash this season in your fantasy drafts, who's banged up, is Luis Saravino of the New York Yankees. So Saravino, another guy, I believe, who had Tommy John surgery last season. And right now there's no reports on when he's going to return, but he went down pretty early in spring training last year. So I'm guessing maybe June or July as well for Saravino. Every guy takes a difference. Supposedly Syndergaard was ahead of schedule, and Saravino, just no word, like I said, with these other guys throwing, and he's not. But anyway, coming into the drafts, he's ranked 593 as Saravino, and his average draft pick's 244, so he's going a little later, and he's a guy definitely going at the back end of drafts. And if he does come back in some capacity this season for the Yankees, he's on one of the best teams in all of baseball, and he can help the Yankees win games and obviously in the playoffs. And he also can help fantasy owners if they need a little boost. So to get him in the later rounds, he's definitely worth an injury stash. And the projections this season, 67 innings, 4 wins, 67 strikeouts with a 3.63 ERA and a 1.21 whip. So they're pretty much projecting him about nothing crazy. They're projecting him this season about 8 to 10 starts for Saravino. And I think that's pretty respectable for the projections. I don't think the Yankees are going to rush him, especially if they're up there in the standings early with a commanding lead in the AL East. They're just going to take it easy with him and progress him slowly, not rush him back and make sure he's 100%. So Saravino, he's definitely still worth the stash. So that's a few pitchers I would look to stash that are injured in my fantasy draft in the upcoming days leading on to the season.